This is amazing. Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing. Who would have thought there were so many writers who have writer's block? No idea. I thought I was the only one. Uh, of course, I'm kidding. Before we get too much into it, I guess I should also say a little bit more about myself. Yes, I have a book out. It's called When the Moon Had Antlers, through Pine Row Press. I really like Pine Row Press, and I have a couple other poetry friends who are having books out through them. So definitely check them out. They're pretty cool. Um, and one of the things that I think makes me a little bit different from some of the other poetry teachers that I've worked with is that I actually have a master's degree in humanistic psychology with a specialization in creativity studies. Try saying that every time you need to introduce yourself. So a lot of what I work on and what I'm kind of obsessed with is not just the craft of poetry, but also the way that, our minds and our art um, influence each other, and then hopefully the way that we can influence each other and hopefully influence the world, even if just a teeny tiny bit. So when I am talking about poetry, I really have a lot of respect for the craft, but I'm also really interested in how the poetic process is going to help us individually as people, learn, grow, have epiphanies, and I think that's a lot of what writing is usually the story of how we come to some kind of epiphany, right? Before we really get into it, though, I would like to just get a slight assessment of the room, the giant cathedral of Zoom poetry room. And I'm just going to ask everyone, say between 1 and 5, where are you in your writer's journey? And 1 would be like, I'm just starting to write. I have a notebook and I'm picking it up after years or just starting for the first time. And 5 is like I'm on my third novel. I can't have anything new to learn because I know it all. I'm just here for the coffee and jokes. You know, and 3 is like, hey, I have some really good writing and I also have a lot of rough drafts and I'm midway through a book, that kind of thing. All right, cool. Great. So it looks like we've got a good group here. Yeah. Lots of 3s, lots of us right there in the middle. The middle is where it all happens. Groovy, groovy, groovy. All right. Cool. So, Svetlana, was there anything else you needed to say in terms of the housekeeping or anything else?
No, I don't think so. I think people are doing it. So we're ready. We're ready to go.
Good. Okay, good. That starts out really quickly. I'm used to teaching through the poetry salon, and at the poetry salon, I have a group of like, usually 10 people at a time, 5 to 10 people at a time, and we spend the first 15 minutes just like, chatting and checking in with each other. So this is weird to start and not know that many people and then just get into it. But we're going to do that. So I have a document here and I'm going to put the link to it, sorry, in the chat. That'll become relevant, my Instagram later. But I'm going to put the link to this document in the chat. And what we're going to talk about today are 7 types of writer's block and how to bust through each one. And let's pause that for a second so I can put that in the chat. Here's the link. And if you can't access it right now, that's okay because you can just follow along with me. All right. So I'll also start out by making a quick plug. The Poetry Salon is my organization and it's on Substack, and we have a lot of free and affordable events, including something that I call the Saturday Celebration, where I just invite people to come read their writing, and then we write to each other's work. So it's a great way to celebrate your achievements and promote your own writing, because I really believe in co-promotion and co-inspiration. So that's something you might you might enjoy attending, and you can check it out by just clicking the link. And we also have a publication we just started called Odd Pocket Press, which is really exciting. And if you're looking for a place to submit, please submit to us. We need more and more good work. Before I get into the seven types of writer's block, though, I do want to start us out, especially while some people are still coming in. I want to start us out with a little warm up here. And we're going to take maybe at least 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes. But I'm going to invite everyone to make a list of reasons why you can't, don't want to, should not write right now. What will happen if you do write? What should you be doing instead? And if you're in the middle of a specific project, you might address this to that specific project. Uh, why am I working on a novel? I'm a poet. This is a fool's errand, da 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 da. Da. But if you don't have a specific project in mind, just make a list of the specific reasons why sometimes you don't want to write, you shouldn't write, et cetera, et cetera. And encourage everyone to write as fast as you can without stopping. It's 38 past the hour, so let's go until 45 past the hour, wherever you're located. All right, this is just the 1 minute warning. Okay, let's see. All right. Does anyone maybe just want to put in the chat some of the reasons, or really you all can, if you feel comfortable, put down some of the reasons that we sometimes get writer's block. Does anyone feel like they just wrote a really cool poem called The Reasons Why I Can't Write? Sometimes I find that those lists can just be like, well, this is all that's going on in your life right now, and that's your poem. The things that are distracting you from writing are often the things that you wind up writing about later. Um, yeah, some of it's that lack of discipline, wanting to make a habit, but finding it so difficult. Great. Television, that one will get you. Um, I'll be disturbed if I start. That one's really interesting. I love this phrase, and I think it originally was a quote about religion, but I think it's true of art that religion and art are there to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. So, you know, depending on what your definition of disturbed is, be a good thing. But that's not something I want to uh take whatever I say with a grain of salt because we're not getting into a really specific conversation there. Stuck, yeah, being stuck is definitely what we're here for today. Yeah, hitting everything in the save the cat checklist. Those checklists can be really fun, but they can also be little hindrances too. Yes, worrying about wondering if anyone cares. The spark dies. Having laptop connections. All right, that one I can't help you with. I am sorry, but you are going to have to see a technician about that one. Overwhelmed, not disciplined enough. Great. So I don't think anyone is saying anything here that I haven't heard before. Yeah. Some interesting thoughts here. So drawing on my experience with the psychology of creativity, but I should also mention that I worked for a number of years on and off in the school system and have worked with a lot of kiddos with learning challenges and a lot of kids who think they're not good writers for whatever reason. And a couple things about my philosophy. I don't think anyone has laziness. I think lazy is the word we use because we're looking at something that's going on outside. Um, but laziness is usually about something else going on inside, like not knowing how to get started. I've been seeing a lot of ads lately for people who are like, you're very ambitious and creative, but you have executive functioning disorder. And that stops a lot of people too. All kinds of factors can stop you from wanting to get started. But if anyone's judging themselves, putting that judgment on yourself, like, I'm not doing this because I'm lazy, I really want to encourage you to take a breath, maybe invite yourself to have a little reframe and go beyond saying negative things like I'm lazy. You know, maybe you're bored, maybe you don't have a routine, maybe you don't know how to get started. There are all kinds of things that prevent us from getting started that are not so negative. So just take the negativity off of that because your creative self really needs a lot of encouragement. It doesn't need a lot of negativity. Okay. So now you can tell that I'm very squishy and I really tried to be very, very supportive as opposed to being an authoritarian. With that being said, I'm also very, very prolific. I used to joke with people that I've never had writer's block. I do have writer's ADHD. It is quite easy for me to get started and then get sidelined. It is quite easy for me to be a perfectionist and write something that's pretty good and then put it aside and not send it out because it's not perfect yet. So I've got some other writer's issues, but writer's block is less of a challenge for me. So why in the world am I teaching a workshop on writer's block then? Well, that's a good question. I've worked with a lot of other writers and I've worked with writers who have never had anything published before, who are new, and then I've worked with people who have gotten many awards. I've occasionally been in the position of teaching a workshop where one of my students has beat me out for an award we both, submitted to. So that's fun. That's really a great place to be. I wrote to another writing teacher of mine and I said, so when that happens, should I just give them the microphone and tell them to teach the class? Um, but it happens. It really does happen. Uh, I want to just expand our definition of writer's block a little bit. A lot of the times we do think of writer's block as being the inability to write anything at all. That's where people think they're lazy. They're sitting there and they're not putting the words on paper or not, opening up their laptop and getting it done. And that's one form of writer's block, and we will address that. But there's other types of writer's block that I think are blocks in terms of preventing us from writing our best work. And, at the risk of sounding a little cheesy here, it's the block that prevents us from telling the truth about something, right? So sometimes writer's block might look like a person lying on the couch not writing. Sometimes writer's block looks like someone writing 20 pages and then throwing them all in the trash can because it just wasn't the right pages and that you took a detour towards the wrong destination. And that's part of the writing journey and that happens to all of us. It's fine if that happens, but hopefully some of these tools will help you to get back on track faster. Okay, let's see here. All right, so let's talk about some basic writer's blocks. One of them I should probably I think it kind of applies to all of these to some extent, but some of it is the judgments or the judgments factor in. So sometimes writer's block is you hearing that critical voice telling you like, oh, I'm not good enough and I'm lazy and stuff like that. And that factors into a number of different things. But let's talk about a couple of them. So the most common one I think is what I'm going to call writer's mask. And what I mean by that is we all want to write well. We all want to be famous writers. Most of us avoid writing because we don't think we're going to write the great American novel or an award-winning poem if we sit down to write. If you knew when I sit down to write, just the most magical thing will come out of my fingers and it's going to be perfect and great. And, then I'll be living the life Liz Gilbert lives. Um, you probably feel okay doing it, right? Most of us don't feel that way. We don't have that sense of assurance. And so we avoid writing for that reason. There's a really simple thing that you can do. And I'm gonna start us out with that. The really simple thing that you do is don't write well. Um, I think that what we go to writing for is to get out of our own heads and get into someone else's. And a lot of us come to the page thinking, I have to be super entertaining to get everyone's attention. But the fact that you're sitting there and you're going to tell someone about your story so they don't have to think about their life for 5 or 10 minutes, you're already interesting, right? Think about sitting alone in a room and a stranger walks in. You're going to be interested in that stranger, especially if you're alone in your house and you don't know why they're there. You're going to be real interested in them and what they're doing, right? So you don't have to work that hard, but you do need to be authentic, right? You do want to come across as a real person. If a cartoon cutout walks into your head, well, okay, if a cartoon cutout came out, that would be just very odd. But if it's if you want to get someone's attention, the best thing to do is to be authentic with them, right? So one thing that I do just to get the pen moving or get the words flowing, you can sit down and literally just write about what's in the room or what's in front of you or what you did yesterday or what you need to do tomorrow. And one of the teachers that I work with, who I've learned a great deal from, his name is Jack Grapes. He also teaches creative writing classes. He is not giving me any kickbacks on mentioning him here, although he should. But you can also get his book and you can hear him talking about his method writing, and I highly recommend it. And his first exercise that he teaches is called Write How You Talk. Write How You Talk. And the basic concept there is write like you talk. It's pretty simple. And the part of the reason why I think that is such an ingenious exercise is it gets you past trying to perform for people and allows you to just start talking to people like a person talking to another person. All right, just drop the mask. Don't worry about being interesting. Just write like you talk. I've shared, I'm sharing two poems here. We're not going to read them right now, but Langston Hughes' poem Theme for English B, I think is an excellent example of someone just writing to another person like they're talking to a real person. Um, and you don't have to stay with it. One of my favorite poems is The Lost Land by Yvonne Boland, and it starts with the line, I have two daughters. They're all I've ever wanted from the earth. Almost all. I've also wanted an island. And then it goes on to this beautiful, flowing, lovely, lost world poem about Ireland. It's great. But the first line is just, I have two daughters. It's like, hey, I just met you. Do you have any kids? Yeah, I have two daughters. It's just very plain spoken. And I think that is what pulled me into the poem, so that I was ready for all of the beautiful language after that. Okay. The second one, writer's politeness. The converse of what I just said about how no, but you're worried about how you have nothing interesting to say. Well, the opposite might be true too. Maybe you know exactly what you want to say, and it is horrifying. It's going to embarrass your grandmother. It's going to annoy your father. It's going to make your mother disown you. Or it might be the worst thing that you have to say about yourself, right? So you might be avoiding trying to write because you don't want to say those things. I think the best thing you can do in those cases is remind yourself that no one has to see your first draft. You can go lock your door. You can put it on silent mode, your phone on silent mode. You can write it in your journal. So there's there's no record. You can promise yourself you're going to write a draft and then throw it in the trash can or the fireplace so no one ever sees it. Just do some writing for yourself. Give yourself the safety to know that whatever you're writing about does not have to be revealed. Your mother may never see it. No one will ever see it, right? Uh, these are the two big fears, aren't they? That no one will ever be reading your writing. That's such a terrible fear. And the other terrible fear that people will read your writing. Both are awful for different reasons. But you can also write a poem, and this is very, very similar to what we did earlier, writing a poem about why you don't want to write this thing. Um, I've seen a lot of people break through by saying, I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell you. And just this list of I don't want to tell you about this can become very, very powerful. I'm sharing some of my own poems here, and I don't want to pause to read them right now, but you can read them in the document later. I kind of want to share all of these and then give everyone some time to do a little bit of writing today. The other one, oh, this one is another one that's so useful, I think. Writer's ambivalence. A lot of the time, people think that they have to know what they want to write about, or they have to sit down and, you know, you're going to write about mollusks, and you have to have something interesting to say about mollusks. No, don't. If you don't know something, start with questions. I'm going to say 75% of the time when I'm stuck in a poem or don't know how to start, I start with a question. And it immediately loosens everything up because then I know I don't have to have an answer, and then I can start dealing with my imagination, you know. Um, what do I think of my mom? We wind up in North Carolina? You know, like these kinds of questions can get really interesting. And then the big questions, you know, where do we go when we die? Well, I'm going to invent a short story or poem about that. You know, the starting with the not knowing and then writing a hypothetical is a great way to get the imagination going. So I have a poem that I shared in here. And then this one is really fun. This is several different prompts hidden in one place. The other one is Writer's Deceit. And I read this somewhere years ago, and I don't know who I can attribute it to. But they said if you are blocked in your writing, it's probably because somewhere deep down, way back in an earlier chapter, you have lied to yourself. And this one I think is really insidious because when you know you're lying to someone else, you know you're lying. And you can say, well, stop lying, tell the truth. But when you're lying to yourself, you don't necessarily know that you're lying to yourself. So you might have a really difficult time trying to get past the lie that you're telling yourself because you don't even know what it is or where it is. So when that happens, I will try a couple different things. And one is to just assume everything I've said is a lie. Everything is wrong. All of the writing is bad. I don't get mean with myself. I don't say you're a bad person. I'm just like, I think you took the wrong turn a while back. Let's start over, right? And there's a couple things you can do to try writing something that maybe contradicts what you thought you wanted to say. So one thing is to take a totally different approach. If you wanted to write a poem that's like, oh, I love this person, and you're getting stuck, try writing a poem called I hate this person. That'd be interesting. Um, there's a great poem by Julie Sheehan that's called Hate Poem. And if you read it, it becomes clear she's actually writing about someone she definitely loves, but uh you know, she disguises it. It's really quite clever. I love that poem. Another thing to do is try writing about the same scene or try writing the same poem, but from the point of view of someone else who's not you. So try writing about something that happened, but take it from the point of view of the moon or the tree or a flower or God or a ghost, because chances are good they have a different perspective. It might be hard for us as writers to admit, like, you know, this terrible thing happened, but it might be easier for like the moon to say it and put that judgment on it. If nothing else, you're going to wind up with a really interesting poem with an interesting point of view. So that's always good. This one I learned from the poet Suzanne Lummis. I was having a really hard time writing a poem about a really serious situation. And I was in a class with Suzanne Lummis who said, try writing it like a noir detective. They're like very unsentimental and have a really dark sense of humor. So I wrote a poem called The Safest Suburb in the World, which is about a situation that was definitely not very safe. But I instead of trying to make it so dramatic, I made it like is so typical drug dealers hanging out the side of their Volvo, just trying to pretend that I was Humphrey Bogart writing it. And that really changed it a lot. And then lastly, oh man, that's right. I wanted to look up this one poem. I'll find it later. But there is a great poem I know where the poet says one thing that's a cliche, but he just changes the one word and it just sells the poem. So sometimes all you have to do is take one word, like, I love John, change it to I hate John. And it'll totally change the meaning of the poem. Um, no Johns were harmed in the making of this exercise. Okay. If and part of the reason I think this works is you can wind up saying things that you didn't think you wanted to say. So you might reveal something to yourself that you didn't know you were hiding from yourself. That's one reason this works. But another reason is sometimes it just gives you uh something to rub up against. So I was thinking about that famous speech from Julius Caesar where Mark Antony is like, oh no, I do not come to bury Caesar, or I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. I would never praise him. And look at Brutus. Brutus said that he was going to become a tyrant, and Brutus is an honorable man. If nothing else, it just really can help you have like some sarcasm, some subtlety. You see the tension between what the person wants to say and what they're saying on top. And if nothing else, that just injects some really great tension into the writing. So I'd suggest those are really fun. We're almost to number 7. We're almost there. This one is this one is the really, really fun one, I think. This is what I do when I have writer's boredom. So you guys can all just raise your hand if you want. But how many of you are kind of sick of your own writing and you'd rather write like someone else? Yeah. I recently have been working on reading Diane Seuss's book, Frank. Just won the Pulitzer like 2 years ago, didn't it? And her writing style is so different from mine. I just look at it and I'm like, I'm gonna rewrite every one of my poems as a sonnet now. Uh, and I know that won't ultimately work out, but I love her book and she's doing some things that I don't do in my writing and now I'm like, "Oh, I want to try that. That looks really fun and exciting and interesting." So, if you're tired of your own shtick, there's any number of things you can do. One of the best things you can do, of course, is take a class. Learn from someone who's different from you, get some new ideas. But if you can't take a class or you've taken a class with all the writers and they've taught you all the same thing, go find someone who's just really different from you and try to imitate their writing style for a little while. Don't worry, you're not going to become them. You're still going to be you, but just try learning something new from someone else. Another couple of cool things that I love is if no one's tried the N+7 generator, that's a surrealist exercise where you can actually plug your writing into the N+7 generator and it will um, basically replace every noun with another noun from the dictionary. So this is a surrealist game that the French surrealists used to play with each other to just try doing something random that would change their writing. Speaking of plugging in, I have to plug in my computer. Give me just a second. All right. My friend just sent me this graphic. I thought it was so funny and so appropriate. Sometimes what you think you need in your writing is a little bit more clarity. Or what if the poem had a ghost horse in it? that's way more fun than clarity. So if you're feeling a little bored or a little dead or stuck in your writing, stop trying to write clearly. Try to go a little weird on us, right? So that's cool. Writer's Guild. Okay, these last two are probably going to be pretty, they're going to be a little quicker. Um, if you're at that stage of your writing where you've written a lot of rough drafts, uh, sometimes I feel like I stop getting inspired to write anything new if I have a lot of old work that's sitting there starting to rot. So I joke with people that, my muse will tell me, "Hey, I've already given you so many great ideas. And what have you done with them? You just write them as rough drafts, you keep them in your notebook, they don't go anywhere. Why am I wasting my time with you? I'm not going to give you any new ideas until you've finished the old ideas I've already given you." So yeah, a lot of the time, if I can't write anything new, I just pick out some old work and I try to work on that. And a lot of the time, if I need to work on some old work, I need to go through one of the first five exercises with it to figure out what I might need to fix with it. And that can take a couple years. So, you'll be busy. And on that note, also writer's overwhelm. If you get yourself into the habit of writing every day, you will find eventually you have a lot of pages, a lot of pages. If anyone is worried that they're not writing enough, there's actually a study from James Pennebaker who said basically that if you write for about 15 to 20 minutes a day, even if you do it alone, even if you don't share it with anyone, it's going to lower your blood pressure. It's going to increase your sense of well-being and your health, generally speaking. There's some more subtlety to it. Like, you basically should write with some kind of technique. You need to write with some imagery. You need to show that your character is changing in some way. It's all the things that you learn from a basic creative writing class, right? But if you just do that 20 minutes a day, like it's gonna give you a lot of mental and emotional and physical health benefits. So do that. I'm highly recommending that to everyone, even if your writing isn't that good, do that. And then you're going to find that you have a lot of writing. And so you might feel overwhelmed. And that's where I'll go from creative writing to creative deleting. And sometimes I just delete and delete and delete. Um, I'm just showing you the size of this poem. I remember working on this poem 15 years ago, and it was like 8 pages long. I brought it to a workshop, my first teacher, Sally Ashton, and she's like, "Tresha, you got to put a cap on how many pages of poetry you bring in here, okay? No more than 2 pages next week." So I brought it down to 2 pages, and then after that, I brought it down to this is less than 1 page because I just deleted so much. And then it won the Robert and Adele Schiff Poetry Prize, so it was worth all the effort there. Yeah. Humble brag, humble brag. The very last one is writer's fatigue. If you've done all of these activities and you still can't write, you're just tired. Take a nap. It's okay. Uh, I was telling someone earlier today, I read recently Elizabeth Bishop, who is one of my favorite poets. She only wrote 120 poems her whole life. She was a perfectionist. And some of her poems are sestinas, and some of her poems are 5 pages long. Okay. But that's only 120. And I think like I said, she's one of my favorite poets. So you don't have to write, you don't have to write 1,000 pages of writing or poetry or anything like that. Right. I think we can get really pressurized because we live in this capitalist society where it's always like more, more, more. No, you don't have to. Okay. Focus on writing one poem and having a really good time doing it. And I'm saying poetry because that's mainly what I work on, but the same applies for novels, short stories, blog posts, birthday cards, whatever. It's really not about the quantity of writing you do, it's the quality and the quality of time you spend with yourself as well. Okay. Uh, That is a lot of words for me. It's 6:15 my time. So what does that mean, Svetlana? I've lost the concept of time altogether. How much more time do we have?
So we have about 45 minutes. I know
Oh,
you
thank
wanted to
God.
do a generative exercise, so I think that the timing is perfect.
Awesome. So what I want to do, it looks like everyone was able to access this very long document uh successfully. If anyone's having trouble, please let me know. Um, I'm going to invite everyone right now we're going to take about, let's say 20 minutes. I said you need 20 minutes in order to have positive health outcomes. So let's say 20 minutes of our 45. And I'm just going to invite everyone to pick one of these exercises. You can take a nap if you want. I don't judge. Um, actually, I will say very quickly, uh, it feels like a joke to say just take a nap. No, there's actually a lot of research that shows that sleep helps you process creative input. So I knew one woman who I think is a really quite an effective writer. And after our workshop every week, she would just go home and take a nap because she said she just needed the nap to process the information she was getting. So, I mean, seriously, take a nap if you need to. But otherwise, pick any one of these, whichever one you think would be most fun for you right now or most useful. We will write for about 20 minutes, and then we'll still have 25 minutes for any Q&A or sharing that you want to do. All right. And I'm going to mute myself, but I am still here. If anyone has a question, wants to put it in the chat or unmute yourself and just shout out a question, please do so. Okay. anyone has just entered the room. I saw one person has just entered the room. I'm going to share the document we've been working on in the chat so that you can catch up with us. Right, everyone, take 1 minute to find some kind of way to stop. You do not have to be finished. Okay. So at this point, I would love to get some feedback and let someone who's not me talk for a little while. Does anyone either want to share what you wrote or just share a little bit about the experience? I'm also open for questions at this time. The doctor is in, the football is out. Some of you get that reference, right?
Absolutely. Well, while people are organizing their thoughts and deciding whether they want to speak, there are a couple questions in the chat. So maybe I'll start with those and then
Yes, please.
I'll open it back up to anybody else who wants to talk. I'm just trying to go to the earliest one. Sandy's wondering about your deletion process. How do you go about deleting your work? I know it can be so hard to let it go.
This is one of those controversial things. And I can't say that there's a specific deletion process. If you want to delete full poems, I know some people think, oh, keep every draft and they're right to some extent. Like you might want to look back later on in your life and read something that maybe you never had published, but you want to keep it for yourself. I have a folder on my computer that's just called sentimental. And if I have worked on something and I'm done with it and I don't think it's going anywhere, I just put it in there. And that way I don't have to delete it, but I also don't have to look at it anymore. Right? That's my personal stuff. Another really great tactic is I've heard this called the wood pile, the scrap pile, where if you're working on a piece and you have like a great line or an image or an idea, but you don't know what to do with it, you just put it in your scrap pile and you save it for later. And then you can add it to another poem or use it to start a new poem later. So those are two things that I do. And then after that, I think you know, you there's so many ways of deciding what is stuff you want to keep and stuff you don't want to keep. Sometimes it's very personal, like I don't want to write poems about that subject anymore. But sometimes it's just about deleting words. So I think one of the best things I can do, I'll share. I forgot to put this in earlier, so I added it in now. Um, Yeah, this is a quote from Peggy Noonan. She says, "Remember the waterfront shack with the sign, fresh fish sold here? Of course it's fresh. We're on the ocean. Of course it's for sale. We're not giving it away. Of course it's here. Otherwise, the sign would be someplace else. The final sign, just fish." So when I go through my own writing, and it can be very, very difficult, as you can tell, I'm a pretty verbose person and I use a lot of, jargon and preface everything by saying, well, some people would think that, I mean, maybe you could possibly, right? But when you get to poetry, it's all about cutting things down to the absolute bare minimum. So I'll go through every line and just ask, can I say this with fewer words? Can I say this with fewer words? Is this boring? Is this interesting? And a lot of the time, if you cut out what's boring, what remains is enough. And if it's not, then you go in and you add some more work in. Right. That's something else you can do too, is like try doing an erasure with your own writing. And that can be really fun because you can sometimes you just delete the stuff that's not working. You have a much tighter poem, but you could also make a totally new poem where you say something very different by just cutting out certain words and seeing how the rest of them clash together. That can be really fun.
Thank you for sharing that. So there are a couple more questions in the chat. There are also two people who would like to share. There's Sandy and there's T.
Absolutely.
Do you want to share or keep going with questions?
Let's go with one more question and then we'll share.
Okay.
Maybe
And we'll come
two.
back to the ones that we don't cover right now.
Okay.
So does N plus 7 use any LLM or generative AI? Do you know? I know it's a
That
software question, but
Yeah, that's a really good question. As far as I know, I mean, N plus seven has been around forever. So it's been around since long before AI came into being, as far as I know. It's actually, but if you don't want to use it, you can also like do it the old-fashioned way, which is what the surrealists would do, which means you take out every noun, you open up a dictionary, you find that noun, you go down seven, and you replace it with a random noun. You can also do it by cheating and just really erase every noun and come up with a new one. So yeah, that's those are some different options with that. Um, yeah, that was a quick one. Give me a harder one.
a harder one. Got it. Do you have any tips for organizing stuff that's everywhere? Notebooks, computer files, phones, etc., that are overwhelming?
Oh, somebody asked me about organization. It's a sign of the apocalypse. Um, no, I'm not a terribly organized person. I have gotten better about it though. Um, I have folders usually, and it's like rough drafts, poems I'm still working on, uh, poems that are finished and ready to submit. And then I just have three of those. I will say, and I think this is really helpful. I keep every draft of a poem in one file. So it might be like, unicorn poem, draft one, and then under that in the same document, draft two, draft three, draft four. And so I can read and I can see how the poem has changed over time. It's something I learned from Ted Kooser, because he said that sometimes he writes, somebody I saw put this in the chat, that sometimes you write another draft and you actually make it worse, which happens. That happens to all of us, right? So he said he would just keep all of his drafts in one place. So if he made it worse, he could go back and see what he had done earlier. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So should we let Sandy share and then T?
Yes, please. Yeah.
You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Sandy.
Hey, thank you. Um, this is really fun. I am going to share something that I just wrote. And so just to give a little background, I do write poems, but I'm on this call specifically thinking about 200,000 words that I'm trying to edit down in manuscript. And it's me- memoir, and my memoir is true crime related, so it's a lot to look at. Every time I go and edit, I keep writing more, and it's overwhelming and all the things. So I decided to do today one of your prompts to say like why I don't want to write, even though I've really kind of written about all these things. So I'll just read it. I don't want to write about what my brother did because I wish it were not true, but not telling the story doesn't make it disappear. And I persevere to write the details of how a son could murder his own father so that it might somehow stop some other family from living through the horror that happens when for too long you won't see the signs, or maybe you don't even know what they are, in a world where hostility has become the norm and crime almost an antidote. I don't want to write about what I think my brother had gone through back before he hurt my father when he enlisted in the service and ended up in a war because he was too rebellious to get his act together and finish out high school strong enough and apply to appropriate colleges. I don't want to admit how guilty I had felt, having already gone to West Point myself and learned it was not my right path, yet perhaps not having conveyed as much as I knew to my only sibling who was my younger brother, that got caught up in recruitment promises and schemes. I don't want to talk about how, when I really stop and think about it, I remember so many times my brother was getting into trouble very early in life, and how we couldn't believe in our good middle class educated family that he was really bad, even when he behaved in ways that psychologists called antisocial. I don't want to say how lucky I was to be 2 years older so I could fight off most of his physical aggression against me in those years when we were both just children, trying to figure out who we might be in the world. I don't want to write about how he was obsessed with horror, torture, and cruelty. And by the time we were teenagers, he told my mom that he thought we were twins and I was the good one and he was the evil one. I definitely don't want to say how upset I was finding this out from my mom just a few years ago when she explained that she had corrected him by saying, "You're not a twin," instead of telling him he was not, should not be evil. I don't want to write about how smart and generous my parents both were, yet it wasn't enough where my brother was concerned. I don't want to write about all the threats he made against our family over the years, especially after he got back from the Gulf War. I don't want to talk about how talented and smart and funny my brother could be until something in him would shift, with paranoia and vengeance taking over, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, my mom would say, and we'd walk on eggshells all around him.
Oh, Sandy. Wow. Um, yeah, that's fascinating. And of course, the paradox is by saying I don't want to talk about it, you talk about it. Yeah. That's terrific. I really also want to recommend this is a little off the subject of being stuck in writing, but there's a book called Writing as a Way of Healing. Um, Writing as a Way of Healing. I am blanking on the name of the author. But for anyone who's writing about something that's very emotionally, you know, fraught, really want to recommend that book.
Okay, good.
Uh, and if you don't have time to read a whole book, something my friend Heather Bourbeau talks about on the podcast where I interviewed her on, she said she writes about a lot of traumatic things. And I said, how do you deal with it afterwards? And she says, after you write, you need to get up and shake it off, walk, do something physical to just shake it off, you know, and then keep writing.
Yeah, I will say, so living in real time through the events, writing saved me. And
Yeah.
I was the main spokesperson for the family and all the legal things. So I was both articulating and then journaling and keeping documents and doing all the things. So the writing isn't the thing as much as, and I mean, when you live through something really bad, like everything else is easy by comparison. But it's not so much the putting the words on the page, it's then going back and trying to sift through and make it more refined in the presentation. And that then brings up more and more and more. And there's a point where you have to get this done. So I will look for the book that you're suggesting. And
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think it goes without saying we're all here in a workshop, but having whether it's a workshop or just having a friend that you can trade drafts with. I don't know if I'd ever have anything published if it weren't for my workshop and workshop friends. So I highly recommend getting into a workshop or getting some kind of writing partner if you can.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, Sandy.
Thank you for
All right.
sharing, Sandy. And I went ahead and found that book that you were recommending, Tresha, so I put it in the chat.
Dan DeSalvo, isn't it?
Louise DeSalvo, I think.
Oh,
You
I knew
were
there was a
right there.
really prominent D in there. Okay, great.
T, would you like to share?
Sure, and I would like to say, wow, what a courageous and strong draft, Sandy. I mean, it's an important subject matter too. Those sort of taboo things in families that are horrible and that but they need to be talked about so that people know they're not alone. Um, there's a prompt, I don't know how many, I can't put it in the chat because I'm sitting in my car juggling pieces of paper and a device, but I think Rattle's prompt for this month is something along those lines, like write about something you should be talking about or should have talked about.
Mm,
Um, but there are a lot of us here, so maybe somebody else can find that Rattle prompt of the month and put it in the chat.
yeah,
Um,
great.
for myself, I cannot, I mean, there's like 100 people in this class. I cannot believe I'm writing a shitty draft that I hand wrote. And then, well, it's not a new place. I usually write on my desktop, but I'm not in front of my desktop. I'm
Read
at
the
the setting
poem.
of the poem. How
T
to
T
be,
is a regular in my workshop, by the way. So just so you know, that's yeah, we're
but you
buds.
said to talk a little bit about the process, so I did.
That's true. I did. Okay, all right. Now read the poem.
How to be friends with a suicide attempt survivor. One day, a group of other windsurfers found a dead body in the bay. There, I just told you the ending. Only not really. Someone sailed quickly back to shore and called the Coast Guard, which, wow, I can't read that word. The Coast Guard, while a couple of them sailed around the body until the boat arrived. There was nothing more to be done. There was everything. Nights to search online and never learn who it was, for moons and storms and lightning bolts and salt to shift around unanswered texts until we talked. But for those months between your last text and the dead body, and now was you bouncing among sails below the San Mateo Bridge.
Oh, uh, I can't wait to see that in workshop. And that's all I'm going to say right now. But yeah, I can't wait to see that in workshop. Great, great writing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, T. Barry Cole, you have your hand raised.
Um, yeah, I was going to read mine. I had no idea what to write about, so I just did the thing where you look out your window. Um, all right. I guess I'll just watch this tree. There it is, an elm, just outside my window. I'll name you Elmer Tree after yourself. Why is it so rare to lengthen a name, but not shorten one? It shouldn't be. Elmer is also after Elmer's glue, because then I'll be reminded to stick with you. Sticking with trees is the way to go. What's not to like? Roots, trunk, leaves, and now swaying in the breeze like a mother with a newborn in line at the grocery store. And now you're painting the air. Beautiful. Elmer, you darling mine. Yes, play that piano of air. Of course you can be naked. Yes, you do have a built-in skirt. You're right. Octopi get so much more credit for their 8 limbs when you have more than 100, all of varying sizes. I see you.
Very cool. I want to rent a room inside your mind. Barry's also in Poetry Salon workshop, and I've told her I'm wondering if she's ever written anything boring before. Um, I love that. Yes, you have a skirt. Yes, you go ahead and play that piano of air. I'm gonna name you after yourself. Just some great stuff in there. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. Denise, you or Nisi, you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah. I'd like to read if possible. Um, okay, I'll just go into it. Deepest fears and darkest secrets are really one and the same, rotting inside like the contents of a deep chest after an electrical storm. 30 years ago, that house has long since been abandoned. If I carry the weight of being the burden for all of the people I hold dear, when I stop to rest, is it okay for it all to come crashing down? The gravity in my rib cage wants to pull me inside out. Interesting how fervently I wish to be known when dread is the lock without a key and I cannot afford a replacement. I know the deeper I sink, the harder I'll struggle. Maybe I am mediocre at best.
Oof. Nicely done. I really love going from kind of that abstract about the, the deep secrets and the dark fears, and then that house has been gone, or we've been gone from that house for 30 years, going from that abstract to that real concrete. Um, and Nisi, you have a question in there. There's a line you wrote that is a question. Do you remember what it is?
Oh, yes. When I stop to rest, is it okay for it all to come crashing down? Or I guess it starts as if I carry the weight of being the burden for all of the people I hold dear. When I stop to rest, is it okay for it all to come crashing down?
Yeah, like I think that's a great question, and I don't know anyone who couldn't relate to that question. I think we all can relate to that question. Like, if I stop for a few minutes, is it all going to come crashing down? And will it be okay if it all comes crashing down? Um, I think a lot of the time, like I said, where writers tend to get messed up is when they try to act like we know everything. But to be really honest, like none of us knows all that much. None of us knows nearly as much as we pretend to. So asking a question to me is like the quickest way to get honest with people and to build trust with them because you're asking a question. So yeah, excellent work.
I love that. We have
All
about
right.
3 minutes left, and there are just a
Um,
couple questions in the
Svetlana, are
chat.
there any other questions or anyone else who wants to share?
Yeah, sorry, am I cutting out? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I got froze or someone froze for a
Oh,
second.
okay. I must have frozen. We have just a couple more questions in the chat, so I just wanted to
Sure.
see. I think we could probably get them answered. So
Yeah,
I
of course.
want to go in order. Do you have any tips for building a writing routine or habit? And then there's one more question after that.
Well, a shameless plug, of course, is you can join the poetry salon. We meet every day except Sunday, I think, and we write and we share together. And we try to make things affordable. So, that's in the chat. Uh, I would also say, there's lots of accountability groups that you can probably join for free, or you can start one. Facebook is your friend. This group is your friend. Join one of those Facebook writing groups and ask people who wants to meet at this time and write together. Um, yeah, or join my group again, if I didn't say that. We're fun.
And then there's another question. I've been feeling a sense of shame about writing stories slash a novel based on my own experience, which is different from writer's politeness, I think. I wonder if anyone feels the same and how you ease the shame.
Let me put it a different way. Does anyone not feel a little bit ashamed about writing about themselves? None of us. No, I mean, I'm not just trying to be funny there. It is true, and I don't know what specifically the shame is about. Um, if I knew that more specifically, I might be able to give you a better understanding or um better advice, better feedback. But for now, I'll just say I think everyone feels that way. And I'll just say this, like I started teaching creative writing when I was way too young, I think. And uh, older people were telling me like, well, I'm afraid of revealing this or saying this thing about this horrible thing I did or whatever. And I was pretty young and was just like, oh, no, 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 don't worry about that. Like, no, we all understand. Don't worry about, saying that. And then I lived a little longer. And then I did some things that I'm really embarrassed to admit to. Now I understand, but I'd say that's the most fertile ground And I would say that um, I I I have seen some writers write about the things that they are most embarrassed about or most ashamed about. And I have always heard the story that when the work came out to the public, people come up to them and they're like, I'm so glad you wrote about this because I have a similar experience and I was too afraid to talk about it. And it doesn't have to be the stuff that's taboo either. I mean, I'll just say like I don't have that many skeletons in my closet. I have some, but probably like my biggest issues that I write about is like worrying that I'm boring, you know, um, you know, anything that you have that you're embarrassed about, I promise you someone else has that same fear. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. I'd run towards it. And again, make some friends, see a therapist if you feel that you need to do that. Read the book. Writing is a way of healing. Definitely don't go it alone. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Tresha. And I love right towards that or run towards it. I think the thing that we think we shouldn't be writing is the thing we should be writing. I think there's a quote about that. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I say very quickly too? Also, I have a friend who I worked with who he's not wrong in this, but he would always say things like "write from the wound." And I think there's a lot of writers who feel like we're kind of being exhibitionists, taking terrible things about us and like kind of trying to market it and turn it into a commodity. One of my favorite poets is Mary Oliver. And if you don't know a lot about her, she definitely, the way she puts it, she had a childhood that was not adequate for anyone involved in her household. And yet, mostly what we know about Mary Oliver is her poems about like I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, and her nature poems and things like that. You don't have to write about the thing that's most embarrassing to you. If you love trees and you also have, some skeletons in your closet and you'd rather write about trees, write about trees. That's also fine. I mean, what is the most important thing for you might not seem very dramatic or um, taboo. So that's okay too, to write about the things that bring you joy or the things that are really special to you. If you feel like writing about it and it's the thing you most want to or feel that you need to write about it. Don't worry what other people think. You can be superficial if you want.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Shusha, for sharing your insight and your wisdom and the handout. I think that's going to be really helpful for people. And thank you to everybody who came today. And keep an eye out for the replay that'll be in your email in just a couple days. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all so much for spending some time with me. And I really hope the handout works out. Uh, there's a lot in there that's probably me being very verbose. So you'll get to that bit about the creative deleting and you'll understand the irony of it. But I do hope that it's very helpful and please do check out the Poetry Salon. As I said, there's many opportunities to join. Some of them are free, some of them are very inexpensive on Substack. Some of them are more expensive, but we do offer some partial scholarships for those who need them. And if you need a regular writing routine or just an occasional place to come and get inspiration and feedback, please check us out. We have a really good time, and the more the merrier. So hope to see some of you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Trisha. I'm going to
Thank you,
stop.
Svetlana.
Yeah.